All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of the D&D 5th edition to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we're going to be continuing with our run-through of the subclasses in the Heroes and Villains of the Theros supplement that was created by Dael Kingsmail and Jeremy. I'm gonna look it up. Jeremy, I'm sorry it has taken me this long to do this. There you go. Jeremy Melul, I think. Jeremy, if you're watching this, just let me know in the comments or to Twitter or whatever if I got the name right. I'm gonna try from now on. It's hard. My brain is tired. So yeah. Today we're going to be continuing this. You may have noticed I took a little bit of a break, and that isn't entirely because, oh, dear Lord, has this been taxing? My brain hurts. Doing this much kind of a in-depth study into anything is rough. And again, a lot of these subclasses not only are really interesting, but they're also very much unique. They're all trying to do things that don't really exist in the game right now, which forces me to try and figure out how to best get use out of all these abilities to really think outside the box and kind of challenge my thought process for how to play D&D. And that is super tiring. So we've got this one and one more. And then I'll have covered all the subclasses. So hopefully I can get through two more of these. As always, there will be a link in the description below to go to the DM's Guild page to purchase this. It's $8. I highly recommend purchasing it because even these subclasses that I have issues with or I feel need some modifications are still really unique, interesting classes. They just sometimes don't work as intended or don't work when they're kind of paired up against other classes in the game right now. But I've been conversing with Dael about this, and she is already taking some of my critiques and probably other people's critiques too, because I'm not the only person on the internet that has opinions on this, and my opinions aren't even. I think highly of my opinions, but I don't think anyone else really should consider my opinions just because I said them. So we know that there are going to be modifications and updates to this that will make everything even more interesting and things like that. So pick it up now so you can see the base version and then watch where it goes. Because both Jeremy and Dael are incredibly intelligent, very skilled in D&D and everything like that. So I'm really interested to see where these go once they do start taking all the feedback back they're getting from all the people that are purchasing it. As before, as of recording this, I believe this is still an Electrum bestseller, which is a massive deal. Like I cannot say enough how big a deal it is that these guys have gotten to the Electrum level, and they can only go up from here. So after Electrum is gold, and then platinum, then mithril, and then adamantine. And my particular things that I've published, I have one platinum, one silver, and one copper bestseller on there. And even just getting to copper is a really, really big deal. So these guys have done amazing work. But please support these guys so they can continue doing cool stuff. So, with that said, let's actually dive into the classes, starting with the new rogue subclass, the Tactician. Now, as a kind of disclaimer, because this is still new, it's only been out for a week. It's still important to me that I'm not going to be spoiling everything in here, in the idea that someone could use this video to get all the class features and the things like that without purchasing it. So I will leave out certain aspects in features and the things like that, and encourage you to purchase the class, because I think it's purchase the supplement, because I think it's really well written, and I want you guys to not only support my friends, but I want you guys to support people that make custom homebrew content, specifically good custom homebrew content. I have seen a ton of people that homebrew completely broken, worthless things that would never work at any table. And I've seen these as the same people that are completely resistant to any sort of criticism, constructive or otherwise. That hurts the hobby as a whole, because people that are not as well versed in what balance is and what helps to ensure everybody has fun are going to find these things, they're going to latch onto them, and then they're going to go to table with people that actually know how to play and want everyone to have fun, not just one overpowered character. And they're going to be very upset and may even leave the hobby, because they got used to this idea of being massively overpowered and being able to play out this super power fantasy. And when they find out that regular D&D is much more about group storytelling and everyone, having a chance to feel special and to shine, they're going to be upset. So I really want people to understand that by purchasing something like this, you're not only supporting Dael and Jeremy, who definitely deserve it for all the work they put in, but you're also kind of going to show everybody that the people that make good content, that put their heart and soul in it, can be rewarded for all the effort that they put in. And who knows? There have been quite a few stories of people that publish really solid DMs Guild content, and then get contacted by Wizards of the Coast to help out with other official things, and this can turn into jobs and things like that. So let's actually get into it now. So again, we're going to start with the Rogue Tactician. I have mentioned before, I am a huge believer in the idea that the holy trinity of roles in an RPG, DPS, healer, tank, should not be just a trilogy. It should be quadrilogy, with control being the fourth one, where the role of the character is not to do a lot of damage, is not to keep the party alive, and it's not to take damage so that other people don't get hit. Their entire purpose is to control the battle. Sometimes that's done through buffing their allies and helping them to do more. Sometimes it's done by debuffing the enemies. Sometimes it's done by literally controlling the battlefield, changing elevations, moving enemies around, moving allies around. I personally think a controller can be the most powerful person on the field when it's played well with the other players. And the tactician is a rogue controller, which is a weird dichotomy because rogues are the ultimate damage dealers. Other than some really high, once you get to high level like wizards or sorcerers, the high end spellcasters, rogues can generally out damage any class in the game for a good like 2/3 of the game. And even when you get to the really high end stuff, they're keeping pace with wizards that can cast Meteor Storm and Power Word Kill and stuff like that. So they are almost always considered a DPS class, but they're actually not designed wholly to be DPS. As a reminder, 5th edition, every single class, every base class should feel different right from the beginning. And the things that define the class that make them feel unique should show up within the first two levels. For the rogue, it has 3 basic things. It's got expertise, which it gets at level 1. It shares expertise with bards, but they get it much later. And expertise is basically they pick a couple skills and they get to add double their proficiency bonus. This is where I get the phrase that rogues are just this far away from being broken, because the skills that they have expertise in, they generally will never fail. Especially as they get higher up and they get, I believe it's called reliable talent at 11, where basically any roll under a 10 for an ability check, they can treat as a 10. And that includes nat ones, because nat ones don't technically mean automatic fails on ability checks. So rogues are just this slight, hair's breadth off of being broken, because the expertise skills that they have, they almost never fail at. So it makes them very reliable. And that doesn't help them do almost any damage, other than maybe stealth, giving them advantage on attack rolls, which helps with their sneak attack. Expertise is entirely role-playing. And so even the idea that rogues are just there to stabby, kill isn't supported even from level 1 of the rogue. They are much more well-rounded than a lot of people think. However, the other 2 things they get are cunning action, which gives them a bunch of new uses for their bonus action. Base, they get to dash, disengage, or hide with their bonus action, which means they are hyper mobile. They can get out of the danger without much difficulty at all. And they are really good at disappearing in the middle of combat, making them harder to target, and sometimes giving them advantage when opponents don't expect them to kind of pop out of nowhere. And then sneak attack is the other thing, and that's just under certain conditions, rogues do crap to tons of damage. They get sneak attack at is it first or second level? Oh, sneak attack right at first level, and it starts as just they do an extra d6 of damage. By the time they get to 19th level, their sneak attack is to 10d6. That's a lot. And if they're rolling with advantage, which a lot of rogues are almost constantly rolling with advantage due to hiding and all these other things they can do, they're critting a lot, which turns that into 20 d6 damage, which is on par damage-wise with 6th or 7th level spells. So yeah. Rogues do a lot of damage, and that's kind of what gets the biggest focus because it's such a big deal, especially when they could crit. Any subclass, which they call roguish archetypes, should find a way to modify or supplement either the expertise, the cunning action, or this is a sneak attack. That being said, the other kind of unique thing about rogues is, unlike other subclasses where really all the features need to fit into one of their kind of specialties, the rogue really doesn't. Because you could literally play a rogue with no subclass, just get nothing on the levels you would normally get an archetype ability, and they would still be super solid. So because of that, because the base class is so strong, a lot of rogue archetypes actually just add new abilities, new proficiencies, things like that, to expand what a rogue can do, because the abilities that they already have are already pretty useful. So let's actually dive into the features itself. The first thing they get at the third level is called Ignoble Methods. And I feel kind of dumb because I didn't know what the word ignoble means. It's the opposite of noble. It's unnoble, but it's the word is ignoble. So basically, an action that is not honorable in either substance or character, or someone that is not from nobility. So first of all, I love the use of that word. I learned a new word, and I really like the idea behind it. The opposite of noble, or the opposite of nobility, really fits a rogue. And the rogue tactician themselves is designed to be this very calculating, kind of similar to the mastermind, but instead of manipulating people a lot, the tactician literally watches and then acts on what they see. Which I just think is really cool. So ignoble methods, you either get proficiency in persuasion, which can be useful, or, and this is one I like better, both the disguise kit and forgery kit. I actually have a bard character that took, I think it's the charlatan background, because the background feature of the charlatan gives them the ability to use the forgery kit to recreate anything they've seen flawlessly. And it's such a cool ability. You need a writ from a noble to go somewhere. You need the king to give you something, to give you authority to do something. Just make it up. Again, this is medieval style communication method. By the time they're able to confirm that the king never met you, you've already come in, done what you wanted, and got out. And combining that with the disguise kit, where you can just come in, put out your forged documents, get everything you want, leave, and then throw the disguise away, so they have no idea how to even find you. Brilliant. From a tactical perspective, the idea of the tacticians, and we'll actually get into it with the next feature, is you gather as much information as possible before you act. And having disguise kit and forgery kit proficiency will just help you to get more and more information that there really is no way you should have. So I love that. I think it's just super cool. The other thing you get at the third level, which I think may be the coolest ability in this entire supplement, probably tying with the Journey Cleric pinnacle ability, It's called Calculated Approach. And I love that you get it at the third level because it really defines the class. The basics of it is during the first round of combat, you can choose to take your turn on initiative count 1 to spend time studying the opponent. Quite literally, you sit back and you watch what's happening so that you can make the best choice possible. And then at the beginning of your turn, you can choose one creature you can see within a certain distance. If you want to know that distance, check out the class. Link in the description. Pick it up. It's definitely worth it. That creature has to have already acted, which if you're on an initiative count 1, unless they also rolled a 1 or somehow got a 0 or a negative in an initiative due to a negative dex mod, they're going to have had a turn already. For a minute, you have advantage on any attack rolls made against the creature you observed. This is a really, really big deal for rogues. Sneak attack has a bunch of different caveats on how to get it. One of the biggest is if you have the disadvantage, you cannot get your sneak attack bonus, which is, again, defining aspect of the rogue. With this, for a minute, you have advantage. So even if they somehow give you the disadvantage, they balance out to give you a neutral roll, which means there's still other ways you can get your sneak attack. That being said, you also have advantage for a minute. So when you don't have disadvantage from something, you are almost always hitting. Even at the third level, advantage is a really, really big deal. It gives you a much better chance of getting crits, which are really important to rogues. And it just gives you so much. And sacrificing one turn to where you act at the very end is not a bad thing, especially since rogues in general are going to have high dex scores because they're a dex-based class. So there's a good chance that because you're not actually changing your initiative to 1, on your first turn, you're acting on an initiative 1, which means next turn, which probably happens right after you take your turn, it goes back to the top of the order, which has a really good chance of being you. Because you're a rogue and already have a high dex score and are kind of built to be really, really fast. Add in the alert feat that gives you bonuses to your initiative, and you basically get to take 2 turns, one after another, and the target you're going to be attacking, you have advantage for both turns. Do you see how this goes? That character is going to get 1 turn, but there's a very good chance that they won't get to 2. Everything about this is just interesting. From my own experience in management, as a manager, you have to deal with crises and mistakes and problems all the time. And because I used to train managers, one of the hardest things to teach a new manager or a bad manager is your gut reaction to a crisis is starting. The first thing you want to do is generally the wrong idea. It's the wrong plan. But because of that, one of the things you have to learn as a manager is when something happens, you need to take a step back and observe everything. Obviously, if something needs to be done right away, like maybe there was a spill on the floor, or someone got hurt, you can't just sit back for 10 minutes going, I wonder what we should do. You have to go block off the spill so other people don't get hurt, or make sure the person that got hurt is getting some sort of a first aid, or an ambulance has been called. So you do have to make judgments right there to deal with the immediate problem. But a good manager, after no one else is in danger. No one else is actively going to be hurt either physically, emotionally, financially. After the immediate danger has passed, a good manager will step back and start getting information to figure out what it was that caused it, what can be done to stop the root cause, not the problem itself. And that's what good managers do. And that's what good leaders do. And that's what calculated approach is. It is the defining feature of a good leader. The idea that when something bad happens, their immediate response isn't to, oh, quick, we've got to fix this immediate thing right now. No, their immediate response is to go, okay, what's going on, and what action can I take that's going to have the best outcome, instead of the first thing that comes to mind, my gut reaction. And I love that. I love that from a real world skills feature, and I love that from a tactical approach. I can tell you from playing low dex characters, it's sometimes really nice to be last in an initiative, because you get to see what everyone else does, and the surprises that sometimes happen in the first round or two of combat are not nearly as big surprises for you. Because you haven't used your turn to do something that won't help, and you can deal with a lot more. So super love calculated approach. Next is sharp mind. And this is kind of a standard and a 9th level of ability for rogues, where it just kind of gives you additional proficiencies or additional protections. It's generally not a kind of battle ability. And this one specifically lets you add half your proficiency bonus rounded down to any saving throws you make against charm effects or spells of the enchantment school that don't already include your proficiency bonus. Rogues have proficiency in dex saves and in intelligence saves. So enchantment and charm effects generally are wisdom saves, or sometimes are charisma saves. So that's a lot of things that make you that much more difficult for the opponent to kind of turn against other players, which as a DM, if there's a rogue in the party and I have a character that can dominate a person or do things similar to that, I'm going after the rogue, because again, that sneak attack is super deadly, and rogues are remarkably hard to kill when they're played really well. So this just ensures that's not happening. 13th level, you get what's called field command, and this is another one that I think is really interesting. The effect of it is when you've either been attacked or you have attacked the same creature for 3 consecutive rounds, you can burn a bonus action, which means this field command is going to be a choice you have to make between using your cunning action and field command. Rogues are not nearly as bonus action heavy as like monks, but they still, that cunning action is really useful. So it does give you two choices, which I like. Neither one is the clear advantage. Use your bonus action to activate this feature against the creature, and each ally within 30 feet of you that's able to hear you deals additional damage on the first successful attack they make against that creature before the beginning of your next turn. If you want to know how much damage, go ahead and pick up the class. There's a link in the description down below. It's definitely worth it. And once you use this feature, another 3 consecutive rounds of attacking or being attacked have to pass before you can use it again. So This one is really interesting. First things first. In D&D, as much as combat can last 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how many players and enemies that they're on the field, the actual number of rounds of combat generally doesn't go too much beyond maybe 6 or 8. Combat, actual in-game time, combat really doesn't last that long. So this particular ability is going to be a little limited by the fact that you just don't get that many turns. However, the fact that every ally that makes a successful attack, which generally means they have to make an attack roll. So if they're casting save spells, it's not going to work. But this is all your weapon-based classes and any magic classes, as long as they cast a spell that needs an attack roll, of which there are many, they're going to all be able to do extra damage, really just for your use of a bonus action. And again, it very much kind of leads into this idea of a really good leader, but being able to help their team do the best they can at what they do. I think it's an interesting ability. I think it gives you choices. Yeah, the extra damage is really cool. By 13th level, again, I'm not going to say the exact amount of damage, but I think they might be able to pump it up a little bit. It doesn't seem quite as powerful as I think it just should be for how long it takes to pull off, and the fact that you're probably only ever going to be able to use this maybe once per encounter. Twice if you're fighting something like a dragon or just like a boss kind of a fight where it's got a lot of hit points and everyone's attacking over and over. So I think it could do a little bit more damage, but other than that, it's cool, it's interesting, it fits with the tactician theme. I like it. And then finally, the visionary strategy is your 17th level ability, and this is another really interesting one. You need to spend an hour instructing a number of creatures up to your intelligence modifier. So this is a Dex and intelligence style rogue, which is not an uncommon build. Intelligence is used to detect traps. I know most rogues I see will have high dex, and then their next highest will generally be either wisdom for perception or intelligence for the investigation, which is what you use to find tracks. Find traps, I mean. So, not weird at all to have an intelligence, a strong intelligent base rogue, especially since one of their saving throws they get proficiency in is into intelligence. So, you can instruct a number of creatures up to your intelligence modifier with whom you should share a language. Until they complete their next long rest, so this is for a whole day, they gain a bonus to their armor class and a single strategy die. If you want to know what the armor class bonus is or what kind of die the strategy die is, you should probably pick it up by using the link in the description down below. A creature can roll their strategy die and add the number to any initiative check, attack roll, or saving throw that they make. And once the die is rolled, it's gone, and you can only use the ability once per long rest. This is really cool. First of all, bonus to armor class is always good. Everyone can use a higher armor class, and if all it takes is a single hour to in the beginning of the day to give them an all-day bonus to their armor class, that's massive. Now, one thing about this only applies to everybody else. So it's not something the rogue can take advantage of themselves. But again, rogues are that far off from being broken, so they don't really need it. They have so many other things in their toolkit. The extra armor class and the strategy die would be nice, but they don't really need it. They can get by pretty well without it. The strategy die is another thing that I think is really interesting. It's effectively kind of like a bardic inspiration that everybody gets, and they can use when they need it, which again fits into that tactician style of approach where they individually to tell each person, hey, this is what you did do, but if you modify your fighting style this way, if you watch for this, or you have this issue where you always expose your flank when you do this kind of an attack, and the enemies know it. So if you intentionally expose your flank and they try and take advantage of this and you're ready for it, you can very quickly parry the attack and go in for the kill or something like that. Like it's a very little leadership kind of the thing to do. That there isn't an ability like this in the D&D right now, and I think that's one of the things I like about it most. Like I said before about Xanathar's Guide, it does a lot of things different. It allows you to play classes very differently, and I like that. And I think this is that same kind of thing, where the Tactician allows you to play your rogue very differently. Nothing in this fights against the base class at all. There's not a whole lot here that supplements the base class, which is normally... for me, which is for me, that's generally a bad thing. You really want your subclasses to benefit your main class. But again, because rogues are already that much shy of being broken, most rogue archetypes don't really buff the main class of abilities that much. Generally, you'll get like one extra thing that you can use your cunning action for, or it'll have one thing that allows you to use your sneak attack in different ways. I would like to see something in here that mentions sneak attack or cunning action, just because it's part of the class. Like, I'd really like them to see just reword for field commander. Instead of saying you can spend a bonus action, they can just call it. You can use your cunning action to activate this feat to targeting that creature, just to kind of tie it in to the base class a little bit more. So it doesn't change anything mechanically. Calling your bonus action ability a new way to use your cunning action. But it does kind of theme it a little bit more with the rogue. Whereas right now, there's nothing in this as a subclass, other than the fact that it says rogue on it, that really ties it to the rogue. Like, this could be a fighter subclass. This could be a sorcerer subclass. There's nothing here that's really tying it to the rogue. So that'd be my only kind of criticism for it, is just change the wording system somewhere to make it feel more of a rogue thing. But all of the abilities are really cool, really interesting. You can create really unique characters using the Tactician, and it's a control subclass, and I love control. So, going up next is the Sorcerer Ascendant and Ancestry. For those of you who don't remember, the idea behind the rogue is they have an inherent ability to control magic, whereas wizards get this ability through years as a study, and warlocks get the ability by making a pact with a powerful creature. The sorcerer just has something in their blood that gives them a connection to magic. And remarkably enough, it's called their bloodline as a subclass. You choose it right at level 1. and it's one of the defining aspects of this as a sorcerer. Now, the other defining aspect of this as a sorcerer, again, because they're inherent as spellcasters, they're very good at kind of firing from the hip as far as magic is concerned. They get this resource pool called sorcery points, and there's a couple different things they can do with them. One thing they can do is they can sacrifice sorcery points to make spell slots. There's a whole equation about how many spell sorcery points are required to turn into whatever spell slot, and they can also take spell slots and turn them into sorcery points. So sorcerers, more than any other class, are super flexible as far as how many spells they can cast in a day, what levels spells they can cast. It's really interesting. The other thing they can do with sorcery points is called meta magic, which is basically they modify the spell as they are casting it. They can do things like the most popular ones are Quicken Spell, which lets you cast a spell that is normally an action as a bonus action. Twin Spell, which allows you to basically cast the same spell to twice under certain circumstances. Those are the two most used, simply because they increase the damage output of a sorcerer a ton. Now, there's a bunch of other ones. If you watch my sorcerer video, you'll hear them. There's a ton of other really useful ones, like Silent Spell, Subtle Spell, or the things that make characters have disadvantage on their saving throws against spells, stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of meta magic that just doesn't get used as much because Quicken and the Twin Spell are just so beloved. But that's what the sorcerer is. They are a spellcaster that is very flexible and can modify their spells on the fly. So the Ascendant Ancestry is basically, instead of having like a dragon in their bloodline, or wild magic, which is basically kind of like luck or random chance has kind of blessed them. Ascendant Ancestry basically means they have a legendary hero in their bloodline. Like, maybe they're descendant of, to use mythological figures, you'd know. Maybe they're the descendant of Hercules. Or Achilles, to use the Greek legends, the theme, or Perseus. These really powerful legendary figures. Some of them have a little bit of godly blood in them. You have one of those legendary figures in your ancestry, and just in your blood, it is kind of shown up and given you access to magic. Let's dive into the actual features of the class. Right at first level, you get what's called Warrior's Instincts, which basically you choose two melee weapons. So long swords, Morningstar, flail, any melee weapon. It doesn't emphasize whether it has to be martial or simple. So you can choose any thing. You could choose a great sword, a maul. You could choose a dagger, a whip, anything you want. You gain proficiency with those weapons, and you can choose a shield instead of one of those weapons, which is cool. However, we can to talk about this again. Sorcerers are what are called sad classes. Sad. Single attributes dependent. They really only need charisma for the entirety of their class features. They just use charisma. So their secondary stats can be just about anything. They can use, they can secondary dex to get a decent armor class. They can secondary constitution to ensure that they can take hits. They can do wisdom if they want to be really perceptive, or into intelligence if they want to not only be, inherently good at magic, but also pretty good at the whole schooling thing as well. Or they could do strength if they want to be me spellcaster, me punch you with fire. So Warrior's Instinct would sound like they're changing the class from a sword class to a mad class, multiple attribute dependent. However, the second part of it says when you attack with either of the weapons you've chosen, you can use charisma instead of strength or dex for attack and damage rolls. This is a really big deal. Now, me personally, I'm a huge fan of what I call sword mages. Anytime you can be a spellcaster with a sword, I'm game. I like Eldritch Knights. I have a Blade Singer that I adore. I'm a big fan of Hex Blades. Like, anytime you can use magic, like I'm a huge fan of Paladins. Anytime you can use magic and a sword, I am game. This allows you to have that sword and still be a sad class. So that's cool. It's interesting. That's also where things start to fall apart with this class. The second thing you get is what's called Ancestral Guidance. You get that at level 1. Use a bonus action to activate Ancestral Guidance. And it's interesting. It lasts for a minute. It ends early if you get incapacitated. And you can dismiss it. No action required. But when you do, you get the following benefits. When you're not wearing armor, your armor class is 10 plus your dex plus your charisma. So they modify what your armor class calculation is. Very similar to monks and barbarians. It's a really useful thing because, again, charisma is already something you're really good at, and dex is something a lot of sorcerers are going to get anyway. And because this is for first level, you can build the character right from level 1 to be a both dex and charisma based caster, and become super tough to hit, which is unique for caster classes. Now, again, this only lasts for a minute, but for that minute, you're doing good stuff. You have advantage on dex saves, and when a creature misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to make a melee attack, a weapon attack against the creature. You have to use a short or long rest to get this feature back. So this really does turn you into a sword mage kind of thing. Swords, this is sorcerer, blade speller. I don't know. It's cool. It's kind of a transformation ability to a point. They don't really give a lot of guidance as to visually what it looks like. They just say it enhances your reflexes for a short period of time. So I strongly encourage anyone that plays this class, ham it up. Come up with some strange thing where, like, celestial armor appears on you and your sword starts glowing or something. Be cool about it. New armor classes is always good. Normally, I wouldn't give the equation for it, but we kind of have to talk about the fact that it's still using your charisma modifier. Index is always used, so this is still fitting you into a mostly single attribute dependent class, which is really good. It's not really fighting against the base class by forcing you to take another attribute and keep it high, or to devalue another attribute that's normally valued by the class. So all this is kind of good, and for first level, it's actually really good because at first level, you don't have a ton of spell slots. You don't have your sorcery points. You don't get those to level 2. So it's a nice thing to have this. However, as we go on, it starts to show some issues. 6th level, you get extra attack. Any weapon class is going to get extra attack. Normally, they get it at 5th level. Because this is a subclass and they don't give you anything at 5th level, they just shift it to 6th level. It's not a big difference. 14th level, you get what's called Heroic Legacy. which lets you choose one of the following benefits. So there's three benefits. You get to choose one. And this is permanent. There's no way to change this. You have the Great Crusader, which is the first time that you hit a creature with a weapon attack, it's got to make a Wisdom save against your spell save DC, and on a failed save, it's frightened of you until the end of your next turn. Frightened is a pretty pretty good status effect to inflict. It causes them to have the disadvantage on its attack rolls. They can't move closer to you. It's pretty useful. The second one is the Undying Bulwark, which you can stir your... basically, on your turn, you can use your action to burn a sorcery points, and you regain hit points. The exact number of hit points, if you want to know that, you can pick up the class by clicking on the link in the description down below. It's definitely worth it. So it's basically a self-heal that as long as you have sorcery points, you can heal yourself, which is great. You can even burn extra sorcery points to increase the amount of healing that you get. And there's no maximum amount of sorcery points. Yeah, this is a really great way because, again, this is a more melee focused sorcerer. You're going to be getting into combat more often. You're going to be getting hit more often. The ability to heal yourself is really, really useful, especially since you can use your bonus action to cast spells if you could quicken them. So you're not even really wasting your action if you use the Undying Bulwark. You're just buffing yourself. And then the last one is the Valiant Spell Sword, which basically, if you use your action to cast a cantrip, you can make a weapon attack as a bonus action, which is actually almost identical to an Eldritch Knight ability that they get, I think, at like 7th or 11th level. So it kind of keeps you on par with the Eldritch Knight. And then at 18th level, you get what's called True Inheritance. Remember, Ancestral Guidance, you can only use once per short or long rest. Well, with True Inheritance, you can spend 2 sorcery points to activate Ancestral Guidance as a bonus action even when you don't have any uses left. So now you can use your sorcery points to fuel your Ancestral Guidance, meaning there's very rare chance that you're going to go into combat and you're not going to use it, especially since sorcerers at high levels eventually get the ability, if you don't have any sorcery points when initiative is rolled, you just get 4 sorcery points. So yeah, this combined with the other things means you're going to be able to use Ancestral Guidance constantly. The other thing you get as part of True Inheritance is your con score increases by 4 up to a maximum of 24. I sincerely doubt, because you also need the dex to have a decent armor class in this, and you can't really wear armor if you want to get that aspect of Ancestral Guidance. I sincerely doubt anyone is going to have a 20 con score that gets boosted to 24. With a sorcerer, it's just not something I see happening. However, 4 points to your constitution is a big deal. At 18th level, that means your hit points go up 36 points instantly. And that's in addition to the hit points you're already getting for getting to 18th level. So that's a big deal. You can take a lot of the damage. The issue with this class is, again, we talked about the sorcerer being a spellcasting class, and their kind of defining feature is their inherent spellcasting. They're very flexible with how they can cast their spells. They can modify their spells as they cast them. Nothing in this subclass affects their spellcasting at all. It changes the Sorcerer into a melee class, but it doesn't give any of the benefits that other melee classes get. Things like, the champion fighter gets expanded criticals. The battle master gets their maneuvers. Even the Eldritch Knight, which is a melee class with casting, gets abilities that kind of blend their melee and their spells. And the fighter is not meant to be a full caster. The Eldritch Knight is technically considered a third caster, because it gets less spells than even half casters. Sorcerer is a full caster, and once they get to higher levels, where they get access to 6th and 7th level spells, and then eventually 8th and 9th level spells, they would be massively limiting themselves if they're using their action to attack. Even if they're attacking twice and using something like Shadow Blade, where when you cast it at high levels, it does a lot of damage. There's still, like, the defining features of us as a sorcerer is their casting ability and their ability to modify spells. Really, the only meta magic you could use with this class would be Quicken spell, and that has limits as far as what it can do to a point. Not much, not as much as the twin spell, but yeah, like we talked about how the ranger, the PHB subclasses actively fight against the base class. This is basically the same thing, where they're basically trying to turn the sorcerer into a fighter, and they even to take abilities directly from the Eldritch Knight. With the Valiant Spellsword is literally the Eldritch Knight ability, and True Inheritance is a copy of a barbarian ability, which is fine if you want to build a homebrew class. Taking inspiration, or even just taking certain features from other subclasses, is not the worst thing in the world. Wizards of the Coast does it. That's how expertise shows up in both Bard and Rogue. That's how fighting styles show up in half of the classes, and other things like that. So it's not inherently a bad thing, but nothing in this subclass benefits the core aspect of being a sorcerer, which is their spell casting. And when you look even at her heroic legacy, only one of the abilities has anything to do with spell casting, and it forces you to cast a cantrip in order to make your attack roll, which again, your attacks are not going to do very much damage, even though they can be charisma based. Even if you have something like a Sun Sword, which does a lot of additional damage, you're never going to be able to compete with something like Sunbeam, or Meteor Storm, or all these really powerful abilities that sorcerers have, or powerful spells that sorcerers have access to. They're very rarely going to be able to use them in addition to the weapons they're carrying. The other issue that comes up, especially if you take a shield, is they can't cast spells when they have stuff in both of their hands. Now, if you take Warcaster, that allows you to do these somatic components of a spell while you have weapons in your hands. However, it doesn't allow you to deal with the material components, which you have to either have a free hand or you have to have a spell focus that takes the place of the material components. So if you build a sword and board Ascendant Ancestry Sorcerer, they can't actually cast spells that have material components. Now, there are quite a few verbal-only spells. There's quite a few spells that have only verbal or somatic aspects to them. And I think there's a few somatic-only spells. So that's fine, but again, you're hurting. You're actively fighting against what it is to be a sorcerer. Sorcerers are designed to use their sorcery points to get more spell slots, to change lower level spell slots into higher level spell slots, and higher level spell slots into lower level spell slots. And that they are full spellcasters. This turns them into melee fighters, which again I think is cool, but there's nothing that allows them to use their spellcasting unless they take Quicken Spell, which will allow them to attack and then quicken a spell as long as they have a free hand. I like the idea of this class. The idea that because of a legend in your past, you have access to magic. However, there's no magic in this class. As much as they claim, yes, this is a sorcerer ability, this is much more of a fighter kind of class. And they do mention that the Ancestral Entity blesses sorcerers with the same incredible strength their ancestors one helm, allowing them to wield both martial and magical power. They don't. This is almost completely a martial class. And again, other martial classes have things that make their martial abilities more powerful. Paladins have their smites. Fighters have a crap ton of different things they can do depending on the subclass. Barbarians have their rage and expanded criticals and things like that. Sorcerers don't have any melee abilities. So really, the best thing you could do with this class is take the Shadow Blades as a spell, which is the only spell that actually gives you a melee weapon. Use the Shadow Blade as your melee weapon because it does so much more damage than even a magic melee weapon when you cast it at high levels. And then bonus action, quicken your spells to be able to keep with your spell casting, getting rid of literally everything else the sorcerer does. There are no other metamagic options you can use because you're always using quicken spell. If you want to use a shield with your weapon, you can't cast spells with material components. I just the class itself, the subclass itself, just tries to turn the sorcerer into a fighter. And if you want to play a fighter that can cast spells, you're much better off playing an Eldritch and a Knight, or a Paladin, or even a Hexblade. This just doesn't work in general. If they could put something in there that allowed you to use your weapon as a spellcasting focus, that would at least allow them to cast spells when they're wielding a weapon. But they really need something in here that allows them to mix their spell casting and their martial abilities. Because right now this is a pure martial class, and it just throws out the fact that the sorcerer is a full spellcaster. Yeah. Overall, like I said, I really liked the Rogue Tactician. The Ascendant Ancestry Sorcerer just doesn't work as written and needs some pretty big modifications to actually make it kind of work with the sorcerer subclass. It'd be a really cool class to see as maybe a fighter subclass, or a barbarian subclass. But as a sorcerer subclass, it hamstrings as a sorcerer so bad that they can't do what being a sorcerer is supposed to allow them to do. But I'm interested in hearing your guys' idea. First things first, in the comments below, what are your thoughts on control type characters? We've seen quite a few here, and I think Dael herself has mentioned that she likes the control type characters. So what are your thoughts on control characters? Do you like them? Do you think they're boring to play? Do you think they're overly complicated to play? Do you like the lore aspects better than the combat? Whatever. Put it in the comments down below. As always, if you're enjoying stuff like this, please hit the like button. It helps make sure that other people get to see this. It helps feed the algorithm. If you want to see more stuff like this, please subscribe to the channel. I put out videos as often as I can. When something big like this drops, I tend to put out a lot of videos back to back, and then I take a rest period. So yeah, please subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff. Share this with everybody everywhere. That is all for me today, and I will see you guys next time. All right, bye bye.